make I sleep, make I no wake up. They want make I walk, make I no chop am. Irọ́ ni wọ́n fi pa àjà ló lẹ́nu. They want for my joy, make I just dey cry. They want make I sleep, make I no wake up. They want make I walk, make I no chop am. Irọ́ ni wọ́n fi pa àjà ló lẹ́nu. They want for my joy, make I just dey cry. Yeah.
democracy in Africa have been put into disrepute because of the two categories, the two systems of society that we have in Africa. We have the tradition, and then we have the modern Africa. The traditional Africa is a system where we have all these systems which supported our tradition, the African tradition, where we had a chief as the person in charge, where we have all this loyalty to the elderly person, where we held this leader as a chief who is above the law. This person, he was always above the law. The only people that would remove this person from the law were maybe enemies from outside. But everybody who lived in there took this person and respected this person as an elderly person who was always right. Now, when we bring the modern Africa accepts criticism. Modern Africa accepts, critical analysis of situations. And modern Africa accepts, reprimand. But now, bringing these two together has caused trouble because there is the larger percentage of the African society is in the tradition. So the modern Africa is really struggling to get there. So as a result, when we look at this democracy, as we talk about democracy today, do we see that there is sustainable democracy or attainable in Africa? The question is very huge to answer. One, we have failed to define democracy in Africa because what we have understood is that when you are a president in Africa, you are above the law. There is nowhere from Cape to town in an African jurisdiction where the president is not above the law. All presidents in Africa are above the law.
Why do you, sorry to cut you short, you brought a good point there, but then why do we have a system like that? Why do presidents all over the continent of Africa feel they are above the law from your own observation and analysis?
My own observation and, from some of the research studies that have been done is based on the fact that, one, as I was talking about tradition, secondly, the colonial masters that came to Africa with a kind of group that was authoritarian on the people of Africa. They had authoritarian system of governance. They needed to impose fear on the people of Africa in order for them to obey and follow the rules. And this is the kind of system that was left in Africa. You will not be surprised to find that if you look at the legal frameworks of almost all the African countries that were left by the colonial masters were legal frameworks which were created for the purpose of establishing dictatorships because they were authoritarian.
So right, sorry to cut you short, Mr. Tsela, but so are you trying to, say to the listeners right now that that authoritarian that came from the colonial masters is what these African leaders have adopted?
Exactly. That's the point. That's where I'm coming to. How many people have changed their constitutions to make it, tailored or similar or compared to the Western democracy type of legal framework, where the leader is not above the law? Nowhere in Africa, in any jurisdiction, in any African country, where the constitution has changed to that limit. I'll give you an example. In an African setting tradition and the kind of authoritarian which was there before, brought in by the colonial masters, no one was allowed to criticize the colonial masters. You'll be imprisoned or you'll be flogged. But today, in this age, in the 21st century, look at the legal frameworks which are there. I'll give you in one of the legal
sorry, I keep cutting you short there, but So when you say nobody was allowed to criticize the colonial masters, are we talking of just the black minority who were not allowed, or the white minority at that time in Africa that were living and working in Africa, were they allowed to criticize the colonial master?
When you look at the original way of doing things in Africa with the colonial masters, I'm looking at the colonial masters with the African people, because this is the system they took. The colonial master, those people who came like from Europe, from the West, they were there, but they were not treated the same way the Africans were treated. So as a result, the Africans took that same kind of system, legal framework. Also, where the colonial masters came from, they had also like kings and all those leaders who were also authoritarian. So when they came to Africa, they also brought the same authoritarian system. And that system has continued in Africa. We have not made a step to move out from that kind of system. Where you can see that in some of the jurisdictions in Africa, they have provisions that states that information of character is a public offense. If you speak against the leader in Africa, you can be imprisoned. We have examples, even in Nigeria, where somebody named one of the name of the president, and that person was in trouble. Even in Southern Africa, where somebody insulted the head of state, was in trouble. Why? Because of that kind of legal framework, which was adopted, and people say they have never changed those critical provisions of the legal framework.
Right. Okay. Now, in terms of moving forward, how can we change this attitude? Is it changing regimes of government? Others say we need to bring in young politicians, like maybe somebody like yourself or Ade here in one of the producers here. Well, I'm not into politics. I'm very impartial. I'm in media and I'm comfortable with it. But then there are young people there that are aspiring, to form government. Do you think that would be the change? What's the solution to this problem of, attaining impartial democracy?
What's interesting is that we have seen recently that there have been a lot of regime change in Africa. We have regime change from Cairo to Cape Town. And this regime change, they have not brought in democracy. They have not promoted the principles of democracy. Why? It's simple. What has happened is there have been regime change, but not system change. As long as we have the same system, the same kind of legal framework, we can change presidents, we can have regime change as many times as we can. But we will still be drawing backwards, will not develop. What we need is to change the system.
But how can we change the system? What is it going to take to change that system, to change our laws? What is it going to change? Is it the system that we need to change, or do we need to change the laws, or we need to change the people that govern us to get a democracy that will be suitable for Africa?
Yes, what I'm trying to say is that you need to change the leadership. As long as you don't change the legal framework. What I'm talking about is the law must change. The law must change, and the law must change in such a way that we need to have the legal framework that transfers the powers from the politician to the institution. Make institutions stronger. We need to, that's the kind of, change we need, is to transfer the powers from the politicians to the institutions. Here in the West, it's the institutions that are very powerful. It's the institutions that run the state. It's not the appoint judges, to appoint permanent secretaries, to appoint almost everybody. And and this has made it very difficult for institutions to operate. Even if you are a technocrat, you are smart as anything else in this world. You work in Africa as an African in an institution, you will not be able to use your intelligence. Why? Because you have to pay homage to the president. The institution is tailored to further the interest of the leadership in power.
Sorry to cut you. Sorry to cut you again there as you are talking. But then, what would you say? Would you say that the democracy that's practiced here in the United Kingdom, the system of the law here in the United Kingdom, the system of the law in the United States of America, the system of the law in Australia, would that, you know, we're still using the same system according to what you're saying. I remember Zambia's former president, the late Michael Sata, who was known as the King Cobra. There's a time he actually addressed Zambians here in the UK and said, we're still using the housing law the Europeans brought to Southern Africa in 1926. And he mentioned that that's not the kind of housing law that will suit us in Southern Africa. Would you say that applies with the law that they use here in European countries is not suitable for Africa, or it works the same? Tell us more.
What I would say is that, you see, as Africa, as I said, we have two institutions out there. We have the tradition of the modern Africa. We need to establish our own type of democracy in Africa that is suitable for the environment in Africa. Yes, what we need to do as people who are now learning, people who have been exposed to the West, we can learn the best practices and then build an Africa that we want. We cannot just pick up one, for example, one kind of system from one jurisdiction. We need to take the best practice from all these places where we are as Africans and then go to Africa and create an Africa that we want, with a system that is workable for Africa, where we are going to see democracy, where we're going to see the rule of law, where we are going to see the separation of powers, where we are going to see accountability. So this is what we want, is the system that we want. And this can only be done by us Africans who are exposed in diaspora and who are still in Africa. If we work together, we can come up with the right kind of legal framework that works for Africa. As long as we continue regime changes and leave the system the same way, we are not better than those people who add oxygen and hydrogen and expect to create sulfuric acid.
Right, okay. Whilst you're still on the line, I think we've got some WhatsApp messages here that are coming through. I'm just going to read out a few. Okay, I think this one is from a young lady called Brenda. And she spoke about something I think that I queued into the questions you know, firstly, I'll go with this one, which I think me and you mentioned when we spoke off mic, and that's the FDI, foreign direct investment. You know, has that benefited Africa? I think, you know, you are coming from a Southern African point of view, but then if you read, you know, around the press, media platforms, you find that you know, West African countries, I think, have benefited more from the FDI. But let's look at Africa in general. Is FDI benefiting Africa at all?
That's another important question. FDI, foreign direct investment, has it benefited Africa? You know, there is a big question on that, considering the fact that Africa is blessed with abundant natural resources. The entire Africa itself, you know, supplies a lot of raw materials to the West. But Africans have not benefited from their indulged abundance of natural resources. The fact is that
Why hasn't it benefited? Would you say that, I mean, what can the government do to help Africa benefit from the FDI?
There are a number of models that have worked very well in terms of making FDI, foreign direct investment, benefit the region where investment is actually done. We can take them all, for example, the model that is practiced in Saudi Arabia, model that is practiced in Arab Emirates, whereby the government has put up a deliberate policy to ensure that if a foreign investor who comes to the country does not invest as an individual, but partners with the local person, an indigenous person from that region. And that is a very good system. The other system as well can be whereby the government, in Africa, puts up regulations that ensures that the foreign investor does not practice illegal ways of transferring the price transfers of the natural resources. There is a big problem in Africa in terms of price transfer of the natural resources, because what happens is foreign investor will come in Africa and get the natural resources at a very lower price, but sell that same product, that raw material, to another company, a sister company, at a very low price, and then resell the same natural resources to another company at a very high price. Meanwhile, the country in Africa has received very little from the proceeds of that natural resource. So, in other words, in order to benefit from foreign direct investment, we need, one, educate our own African people to understand how foreign direct investment should work. If you look at most of the African countries, they haven't invested so much in academic, in improving, in targeting the right people, in targeting the right industry, and this has also contributed to the issue that there is simply no connection between education and the industry in Africa.
Why is there no connection? Why is there no connection? I'm just looking at the WhatsApp messages coming in, but go ahead. Why is there no connection?
There is no connection. There is literally very difficult to understand why up to now, we are still, I will give an example, we are still sending people who are coming from the extraction industry from Africa to come and study here when we have been mining for more than 50 years. But we are still sending people to come and learn extraction mining here in Europe. In some of the towns where there's even literally no copper mining, no gold mining. There could be maybe oil fields somewhere. But why up to now we don't have this type of academic in Africa is because our politicians have never looked at the purpose of education in Africa. The purpose of education should be education that is going to improve the economy. The education must be tailored to the type of industry that we have in Africa. For example, I'll give an example in Zambia. Zambia, we have copper mines. How long have Zambia been mining copper? to the academics will not benefit from, FDI. Secondly, because we want to understand how these, investors are supposed to operate, their procedures, and what they're supposed to be doing. Up to today, most of African countries do not even care whether their community are polluted, whether the people in Africa are polluted by foreign investors, companies. They don't even care. All they want is the money. So as a result, we don't benefit, and we get very little out of that. How much money has Zambia lost from the due to price transfer? A lot of money, and even other countries in Africa are in the same boat.
Right, I'm still talking about. Sorry to cut you short there, Mr. Chisela. Very factual points that you're bringing across. But then it is alleged. I repeat, it's alleged, or rather been said, that whenever an African country starts producing rich minerals, we're talking of diamonds, we're talking of copper, we're talking of oil, there's wars in this country. All of a sudden we see a war. What do you have to say to that?
You see, what has happened is that the foreign investors, they come from countries where there are very strong regulations and rules, and they come to a country where there are no rules, sometimes completely no rules in other regions, but the region is endowed with a lot of natural resources.
Right, sorry. Sorry to cut you again. My point is, would you say these wars are instigated from somebody from the outside world?
Of course, some of the wars promoted by the multinational companies that invest in Africa, because the only way they can continue getting these natural resources is when the situation in that region is unstable. Because if it's stable, there'll be regulations, there'll be restrictions. They won't be able
And
to
do you think governments are aware of that? If they are not aware, how can we change, the infighting that, for example, we've seen various African countries that possess so much natural resources, and they are at war. Not very accurate now with mentioning all the countries with factual research. But then I know that there are countries in West Africa, Southern Africa, that possess so much of mineral resources that could bring or generate so much revenue for these countries. I mean, are the governments aware? If the governments are not aware, what else can be done from a citizen's point of view to change this picture? You've mentioned Nigeria here, and my producer is nodding his head to say, yes, it's true. Like, Nigeria has got so much oil, but then, we've seen a few setbacks, of course, in Nigeria. The positive thing is, of course, they've had very transparent elections, but then Nigeria is just one of them. We've seen other African countries where they can't even have transparent elections. What can be done by these governments or citizens, or in general? What is your say to that?
You see, I have a lot of, conviction that Africans can do it. It's now Africans who should sit down, take a step back, just like our forefathers who were freedom fighters who brought independence to Africa. They stepped back and said, this is wrong. We have to do something different. This is wrong. And the best way is most of these African leaders who believe in Africa had an opportunity to come and study in the West. They studied in the West and they understood that this is the right way of life. So when they went back, they said, no, this is not the way. So it's up to us now, especially some people who have been exposed or been in diaspora, to come and sit down with the people back in Africa to say, look, we can do better. This is not the way we're supposed to be doing things. These are our minerals. We need to make regulations. We need
Right, okay, Mr. Tsela, time not with us, of course. It's been a pleasure having you on the program. But obviously, before you go, just to wrap it up, tell us something positive that we ought to do here in the diaspora, despite, we mentioned during the start of the program that there is a complex, which is the truth, and it's accurate truth. What can we do here in the diaspora to continue uniting here in the diaspora and continue contributing positively to our nations throughout Africa?
I think the most important thing that we need to do as people in diaspora is that we need to start having workshops as Africans in diaspora to be discussing these issues, pertinent issues. And it should start from here in diaspora. We should start by working together as Africans for the good cause to develop and improve Africa. The only way is like you have this program whereby you should invite a lot of Africans to come on such kind of program. And then maybe announce to say we have a conference for all youth, African youth in Europe or in UK. We are meeting in London. Please come and meet so that you can discuss issues of how we can develop Africa. Otherwise, if we just sit down, no one is going to develop Africa for us. We have acquired the knowledge, the skills that we need to develop Africa. Some of the people from Africa are in decision making in very important institutions here in the West. And these, if they were meeting with other fellow Africans, having a workshop, coming together, this will help because one day, one from those workshops will become the leader of an African country. In Africa, you just need one good president who is going to say, yes, let's reduce the powers of the politicians and give to institutions, and the change will begin. Independence was started by one African country, and the entire Africa became independent. So the same with good leadership, we can start with one country. So I need to say, we still have, I'm convinced that as Africans, we can do it. As Africans, we have done it. We have done it in our schools. We have done it where we work. We have proved that we can do it. So if we come together and believe in ourselves, Africa will be a great basket for the entire world.
Right, okay, Mr. Tsela, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are definitely going to be in touch in the future, obviously, to have you on programs similar to this on Noble Radio TV, #1 for the voice of diaspora.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, thank you. You have a pleasant evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, we're about to come to the end of our first ever program on Noble Radio, which is the voice of the diaspora. Remember, this program is tailored for all those that are in diaspora that would like to air their views or opinions on Africa. It doesn't have to be politics alone. It can be any other issue that can bring positivity, development, eradicate poverty to the lovely continent of Africa. Well, that was Mr. Tsela, a lawyer and former chairperson for the Zambians Association in Scotland, who was our first guest this evening, talking about democracy and leadership among African leaders. Well, that's it. I'm John Chinode. Do join me tomorrow at 5 p.m. for the Sports Corner, where we bring you live information right here on Noble Radio on football in Africa, the local leagues in Africa. I'm sure a lot of you are now happy that the Premiership is about to start here in Europe, but don't forget, in Africa, we also play football. So therefore, tomorrow join me, as I said, at 5 p.m., where I bring you results from West Africa, North Africa, Kenya, Southern Africa, and all over Africa. Well, from myself and my producer, Ade, I would like to wish you a pleasant evening and sleep well.